See you on Friday.
So EMEA is down to its last team. Everyone eliminated. Heretics gone. Liquid right at the death. It falls to FNATIC. And I tell you what, I'm ready, baby. I'm ready, baby. It's coming home. It's coming home. It's always been coming home. I was prepared for this moment. I was prepared for this. Welcome back to Pick'ems, where I tell you who I think is going to lift the trophy in Toronto before the playoff stage starts tomorrow. We currently find ourselves in the top 53%, which means that we are not yet eligible for one of the gun buddies. Not ideal in terms of how Swiss went. We managed to get the Sentinels pick correctly. We pivoted away from Gen.G. Both of those went 2-0, so that was comfortable. But Heretics underperformed. They weren't able to fix their issues. And MIBR had some of the same problems that I highlighted. The inexperience, perhaps, and even some of the more reputable names, such as Aspas and Verno making an international debut, didn't perform to the standard that we maybe expected from them. This is how the Swiss bracket ended up looking, and in terms of surprise packages, we ended up getting Wolves moving through out of this crop of teams. PaperX, the train continues for them. Very impressed with how fundamentally sound they've looked at times and the improvements that they've made, despite the scare that they had against Team Liquid, which means that EMEA will only be represented by FNATIC when it comes to the playoffs. I had high expectations for BLG, so unfortunate that they don't quite make the cut. And for Liquid, definitely some things to think about heading into Stage 2 with Penny subbing in for Serial and making a weird 6-man roster. Let's get straight into the main part of this video, the playoff bracket. First game, G2 versus PaperX, the team which most people expect to lift the trophy come the end of this tournament, and PaperX, which a lot of people maybe weren't expecting to see at this stage in the competition, or at least a fairly popular third choice, I believe, in terms of those Swiss stage results. They've had a lot of momentum up until this point. Every game has definitely favored them, I think, in the fact that they were able to get some consistent reps. That Gen.G game, though, definitely exposed some of the weaknesses that this team has, and towards the end of the Liquid match, it felt like they did really struggle to close that one out. You saw with the amount of rounds in a row that were being picked up by the EMEA representative at a halftime scoreline of 11-1 in PaperX's favor. I feel like this is a pretty easy choice for me, G2 to win the first game. XLG Sen, a lot closer than it would appear on paper. XLG, as the #1 seed of China, have shown a lot of people what they're capable of. Coach Foyer has been putting in a lot of work. He selected Sentinels, which would be a surprise for some, I think. And looking at their players, you've got Raga in his rookie year as well on the Duelist, who's looked fantastic. But I also feel like the composure that Sentinels have is probably a little bit too much here for XLG. And this is a general theme that I think I'm leaning into for this event. Experience versus teams that are just getting their breakthrough on the international stage for the first time. Who's going to stand up to that test, and who is it that maybe needs a little bit more time before they could make a deeper run at champs? I'm going to sit on my laurels here, rest on it. Sentinels have served me well so far. I'm going to pick them for game number 2. Game 3, RRQ Wolves. This one is one of the most difficult, I think, in the opening round. Honestly, all of these games are, and with these pick'ems, it's make or break, right? I'm sat on the edge of 50%. If I don't do well in this first round, that's going to really look nasty later down the line as it assigns points based on who the match winner is rather than, you know, whether you got the previous ones completely correct or not. So essentially, this first set of games sets up how my bracket is going to look. I could go RRQ. I think they're probably favorites here, to be honest. Jemkin has performed ridiculously well. Last 4 series that he's played domestically, top fragged, been an unbelievable player, a great pickup from the Challenger League a couple of years ago, akin to something on PaperX, and has really galvanized this team. With Monyet too, coming out of his stint with PaperX, also a little bit of overlap there. So many positives for them. However, I really like the look of Wolves, and I think as a unit, as a team, they've already got a few games under their belt now. Something I've seen about them is that they turn up in the games that matter. They won their game, which they needed to, in China to qualify. They ended up losing that lower final match against BLG, but it didn't matter. They'd already done the job. Same here. They win the game that they're supposed to. They go through. I feel like maybe they would be a strong team to have going through the lower bracket, but the way that I see it is that they carry on where they left off, whereas RRQ maybe a little slower to start on this big stage. Final game, FNATIC versus Gen.G. Another repeat similar to G2 and PaperX that we saw from Shanghai, where teams were able to pick who their opponent was. FNATIC were the last seed in that draw, so they didn't get to pick. They were the last ball taken out of the what would you... They were the last of the balls taken out of the jug, or whatever you want to call it. Gen.G were the team which were manually assigned to them. They didn't get to choose their opponent. Gen.G have been playing really strong, fundamental Valorant at its core. Meanwhile, Texture has been allowed so much freedom to go ahead and overheat, I think it's fair to say at times. He's been playing a lot of the Neon. You're seeing him with the op in his hand, take the first peek and then disrespect for the second. He can really punish you if you don't find a way to shut him down. It was the MIBR game where Texture went 10-0 for first engagements, so he didn't concede a single first death. He contributed 10. His operator is going to be deadly. They've got to find a way to deal with that. I honestly would love to pick FNATIC here, and I do have faith for them in this playoffs bracket, but I think Gen.G feels like the more obvious choice here to kick things off. Second round starting from uppers, G2 versus Sentinels. Gonna go with G2 again. Sentinels did look a little bit shaky. I think there's a world where I pick XLG over them instead. G2 are such a high quality team. I feel like the extra time off hasn't exactly gonna have been left them there twiddling their thumbs, not knowing what to do. It will have been well optimized by Josh RT and Valen to get the most out of this team and tinker a little bit, because as we know, the Teho changes will have affected them in some sense. There was a lot of discourse about, oh, Trent's going to fall off massively now that he can't play Teho. But you have to remember, his Sova and Fade before was second to none. He was the best initiator within his region, I think heralded by most people. I have absolutely no doubts that it's not going to be a huge hit to them. And against Sentinels, it's a match that we've seen before. I believe that they have what it takes, especially with some extra footage and tape to go over and prepare for this one. Wolves Gen.G would love to see Wolves go ahead and prove everybody wrong and even get further than this first upper semi, which feels ridiculous to say starting things off. But yeah, I believe that Gen.G are going to carry on from that FNATIC game with the same kind of confidence that they've shown us so far in the tournament, setting up a really nice upper final between both G2 and Gen.G. Just thinking back on some of the stuff that I touched on before, Foxy9 on Sentinel has looked absolutely fantastic. He's such a brilliant flex player. He's removed all doubt in my mind that I had about him in this lineup, honestly, because why? Where was I? Yes, Gen.G in the upper bracket final, because they look very good. Art as well has actually been performing, pretty nicely on Initiator. Very impressed with how he's looked coming into his first international tournament. Whole of Gen.G definitely ones to watch in this playoffs, hoping that you get the point. Gen.G are moving on. Lower bracket, PaperX versus XLG. Now, this is a difficult one for me. I feel like PaperX, as I mentioned before, have shown some weaknesses in this competition. That Liquid game leaves a sour taste in my mouth. However, this train doesn't look like it's going to be stopping just for no reason, right? And this does put me in a difficult situation for the pick'ems as well, because I feel like there are a lot of teams around the same bracket that maybe I've not seen too much of because I have been focused on EMEA. That's the kind of experience that doesn't exactly help you when it's only FNATIC here. But I digress. I'm going to be riding the train for just a little bit longer. I think, honestly, them moving into top 6, it's got to be a nice feeling, I think, for the PaperX fan in the audience right now, whatever. You get the point. I was ready for the Liquid rail replacement bus, but we're back on the train. The train has been uncancelled. The conductor has gone off strike. We're ready to take that into top 6. RRQ versus FNATIC, bad hand maybe for RRQ to be dealt, especially after having that opening match against Wolves. I think this is probably the last team that you'd want to face, actually, in an opening game, to then get thrust into a situation where it's either FNATIC or Gen.G. Even the regional matchup probably feels more favourable for them. I can't do my boys like this. The black and orange will be moving on in the lower bracket for a little bit longer. Can I, reverse engineer this and say black and orange RRQ maybe? Potentially. Look, honestly, I genuinely think that there is a world where if RRQ win this game against Wolves, my bracket looks like this instead. And spoiler alert, I end up putting them like top 4, top 3. honestly. Whereas if it's Wolves, then I'm getting to it. I'm going to have Wolves moving forward. Genuinely, either of these teams can make it through the lower bracket. I just believe that when they move into that uppercut of quality, I'm talking G2, I'm talking Gen.G, and I'm talking realistically either one of Sentinels or FNATIC, then that is where they're going to struggle. But when we're looking at midfield, sort of upper midfield, I think that both of these teams are fairly evenly matched. So that's my little back trace. But now as we look forward with Wolves beating Paper X, as I believe at this point they'll be wounded, I don't know how much further I can take this, to be honest. And look, I will continue to have my doubts about them until we get to champs and maybe they put on a stronger performance regionally. But I mean, this is bloody good going for where they've got to from the group stage that they had in stage 1. Sentinels versus FNATIC. This is a matchup that we've seen played before. We saw it at Champs last year, and this is where FNATIC's map pool does get called into question a little bit, especially their Sunset, because that would be a repeat matchup if we did end up seeing it. We've seen them play it a few times. Champs last year, I believe they lost it by 2 rounds against a couple of teams. It might have been Sentinels and Crew. Map pool here is really important. Sentinels already have some repetitions on Sunset in a live environment, whereas FNATIC don't. But I've got to back the boys. I've just got to back the boys, right? I'm backing the boys to not only win that game against Sentinels, but then demonstrate this slight difference between the teams that I was talking about here with RRQ, Wolves, whoever it ends up being. So I'm going to put FNATIC in top 3. However, to then push them any further than top 3, going to be a little bit difficult. With most of our bracket out of the way, we are now looking to those final few games. The, well, best of 3 first here, G2 versus Gen.G. Who makes the final? It's got to be G2. Still favoring them to have this run through the upper bracket. I don't think that's going to be the hard part. It's this best of 5 and grand final where things start to get interesting for them. Back-to-back regional winners, of course. They've played a few of these series before, but on that international stage, it just feels a little bit different. The Bangkok finals kind of set them up to be winning this one, but who is it exactly that they're going to face? Probably Gen.G again. I struggle to see FNATIC in this best of 5 environment, then really looking like the stronger out of the two. Both of them ended up playing grand finals. FNATIC won theirs, Gen.G lost theirs. Alright, just got to hang on for a little bit longer. We're nearly there. Let's summarize the top 3 then. Gen.G, FNATIC, G2. I have G2 winning it all, and I'll tell you why. That Bangkok final highlighted a lot for me. Sure, they got really close to closing it out, but these are the kind of mistakes that you learn from. Same reason why FNATIC were able to come back, win lock-in, and start to build on a dynasty which completely washed away the bottle merchant notion that we've been holding on to them for ages. Sure, that came with player changes, but in terms of G2, it's the leadership that I'm looking at. Again, Josh RT setting them up to succeed. He wants to try and play perfect Valorant. You can't always do that. That is the admission that they're going to have to make. The concession, I should say. Valorant has to be able to call against some pretty crazy styles that he's going to be playing against. But if you want to talk about the game against Gen.G, if they're both playing fundamentally sound Valorant, I think I prefer this final for them against a different Pacific opponent to T1 because of the way that Gen.G have a little bit more structure. Maybe those protocols are a bit more readable. The double duelist that T1 were playing was quite chaotic at times, difficult to control. There were some ridiculous rounds getting played. They've just got to stand to the test of that pressure. For FNATIC to sneak top 3 on the other side of things, with Gen.G sort of just being a quality team in the middle, I would say that right now, Boaster is calling some of the best Valorant that we've seen from him in the last few years. The mid-rounding has been exceptionally good. I think of examples such as that Vitality game on Haven that we saw in particular, where when he's in control, then FNATIC are playing the best that they possibly can. Kayak has been stepping things up in terms of performance, where maybe Alpha has dropped off a little bit, but you're seeing those improvements from game to game. That's what we've got to be keeping track of. That's what this lower bracket is all about, them paving the way to make top 3. I'm pretty sure in most of the predictions videos that I've made that involve FNATIC, which ultimately is most of them, due to their recent successes in previous years gone by, always rank them especially highly. So it's no surprise that that tiny bit of bias creeps in and that they do make it to top 3 here. But I still have G2 taking it home. I have Gen.G making a deep run. I think they've got the quality to build on what they were able to do at home in Pacific. That is what I end up settling on. And those are the picks that I will be finishing the event with for Toronto. Maybe I make some changes off camera. Look, the HazzaJC Guide to Perfect Picks disclaimer, does in fact not guarantee that you will be getting perfect picks. It doesn't even guarantee that you'll get the gold buddy, but these are just my thoughts, and I would love to hear yours in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. Plenty more of this coming up, plenty more in the following stages in the build up to Champs Paris. I will see you all then, but for now, goodbye.